today on Ag News Daily.
Southern rust, though, was by far Trump's tar spot as far as the area that it covered. So the southern rust did cover a wider geography and it had some big impact. Now, southern rust for, Corn Belt farmers, we're still saying, it's a disease. It does not overwinter in the Midwest.
Welcome back to the weekly edition of the Ag News Daily Show. You look much nicer than I do.
You just came straight from the field, so we appreciate the dedication.
I did. This is kind of fun for us. We're recording a little bit earlier this week because you got a big weekend event ahead of you.
I do. We have a big event on Friday with rural female business owners, so we're recording early this week.
Well, the weather should be nice. We have seen high wind watches and warnings that have been in effect for most of the plains. It is predicted that some of these wind gusts will top 40 miles per hour. It'll be common to see each new storm system move through the country over the next couple of weeks, while central and southern Texas will hold steady with consistent temperatures that the rest of the nation are not seeing. Including the plains and the Midwest, it will ride more of a typical roller coaster of fall weather with volatile temperature swings and storm-driven changes. The forecast models now show a bit of an active pattern through early November. One model, Eric Snodgrass, the senior science fellow with Nutrient Ag Solutions, said had previously suggested a drier month. Now we're seeing supports of a more energized Pacific storm track. That means that the northern half of the U.S., from the Pacific Northwest through the plains into the Midwest and the Great Lakes region, we'll likely see more frequent storm systems. Though the South will remain drier overall, it's not as dry as earlier outlooks had suggested as well. There is a system currently lingering over the Great Lakes and is still producing isolated showers and those gusty winds. Throughout this week, the cooler air will follow it and bring areas of frost across the Midwest for the next couple of mornings. As we look ahead, the southern parts of the Midwest area could see those scattered showers, as discussed this week, into the weekend, persisting with a stronger storm system that may develop earlier next week. That system would bring widespread rain, strong winds, and another drop in temperatures, making it a mixed bag for farmers trying to finish their harvest. While much-needed rainfall could help ease drought concerns and benefit that winter wheat establishment in the central and southern plains, it may also delay harvest in some of these areas. I just was talking to the neighbor and I said, I feel like I dig dirt out of my eyes every day for how windy it's been.
Well, how's harvest coming? You going to get done soon?
I'm hoping so. We're certainly in the final push.
So are we as well, but we don't know if the government is in a push to fix this government shutdown, which means we don't have a USDA crop progress report this week. We're still missing some of that critical data, but to fill the gap, a Reuters poll of analysts estimate that about 44% of the U.S. corn crop was harvested as of Sunday, and estimates varied from private analysts across the board from 35 to 55%. In the Midwest, local agronomists paint a mixed picture, saying Iowa's harvest is moving quickly, with some nearing completion, while in Illinois, about 60% of the crop is out, and Nebraska's about 10 to 15% harvested. The lack of official data has added more uncertainty to already volatile grain and oilseed markets. In response, Farm Journal surveyed producers to gauge yield trends. The results showed U.S. corn yields are slipping compared to USDA's September projection in 6 of their 7 crop tour states. Nearly 3/4 of respondents report steady to lower yields, largely due to persistent dry conditions and disease pressure that happened at the end of the growing season. The sharpest drop appears to be in Illinois, where yields are estimated to be down about 7% from the September report. If trends hold, the national average yield for 2025 could fall below last year's 179.3. While final numbers remain uncertain, growers and analysts are closely watching weather, harvest pace, and market impacts as the season heads toward its final stretch. But likely no yield data numbers until maybe even next year. I hate to say it.
What happened to a big crop getting bigger?
That didn't happen this year.
It didn't. Well, we did get some news out of Secretary of Ag Brooke Rollins. She says that the Farm Service Agency offices across the county will reopen this week following the recent government shutdown. The USDA will also release over $3 billion in delayed funding to support farmers. That money comes from the Commodity Credit Corporation and will help fund key programs like the commodity price supports and disaster assistance. Now, starting on Thursday, USDA will resume core operations at 2,100 county-level FSA offices. This will be nationwide to help distribute those funds. That includes processing farm loans, price loss coverage, and agricultural risk coverage payments, and other critical services for producers. These offices will operate with limited staff and reduced hours. So although they are open, it will remain at this limited staff and reduced hours until the federal budget is finalized. Producers are urged to check with their local FSA office for current hours and details of their program availability and payment timelines. So a small update there, at least getting some things back working again.
Certainly, we could use that at the farm gate level. On Wednesday, the U.S. Department of Agriculture announced a new plan to strengthen the nation's beef industry as cattle numbers reach, of course, a 75-year low. Even as consumer demand for beef has grown by nearly 9% over the past decade. This new plan focuses on rebuilding the nation's herd, improving rancher profitability, and stabilizing beef prices for consumers through three major priorities. One, protecting and improving ranching operations. The second, expanding processing and marketing access. And the third is building demand alongside domestic supply. Among these key initiatives, the USDA and the Department of Interior will launch a joint grazing action plan to reopen roughly 24 million acres of currently vacant federal rangeland, streamline permits, and expand access for ranchers. This plan also enhances disaster and predation relief programs, expanding risk management tools for beginning ranchers, and prioritizing veterans entering ranching careers through the Ag Vets program. Other measures also include compensation for livestock losses with predators such as wolves and coyotes, and modernizing grazing and range management practices to strengthen rural economies. To help expand processing and improve market transparency, the USDA said they will also begin enforcing Product of the USA labeling on January 1st of 2026, ensuring only U.S. beef born, raised, and slaughtered in the U.S. carries that label. Small processors will receive fee reductions and new grant opportunities, including up to $2 million each through the Meat and Poultry Processing Expansion Program. The plan also promotes sourcing local beef for school meals and emphasizes protein in the upcoming 2025 through 2030 dietary guidelines for Americans. Efforts aimed at increasing demand and maintaining a resilient domestic beef supply chain, Tanner.
That sounds like a lot of work to accomplish in a short amount of time.
Does.
Well, we had some feedback from associations. The farm groups and cattle producers are pushing back against President Donald Trump with this proposal. This came late last week to import beef from Argentina in an effort to lower prices in U.S. grocery stores. The National Cattlemen's Beef Association warned that this could damage domestic producers and erode consumer trust. The association posted to their social media on Wednesday, stating that we simply ask that the government not undercut them by importing more Argentine beef in order to manipulate prices. We did hear from the National Farmers Union president, Bob LaRue. He said that the focus should be on restoring fairness in the U.S. marketplace, not relying on foreign imports. American Farm Bureau president Zippy Duvall added that weaker cattle prices could worsen challenges that producers are already facing, including drought and this shrinking herd size. There are tensions, and this comes as Treasury Secretary Scott Bassett confirmed the administration is working on a second $20 billion aid package for Argentina. This is doubling the U.S.-backed support to nearly $40 billion. Ag economist Greg McBride says the financial help would stabilize Argentina's economy and make it a stronger competitor in global markets. McBride warned U.S. farmers should be concerned, especially as Argentina becomes a growing trade partner with China amid ongoing tariff disputes with the U.S. So we'll see what happens out of that story.
Well, as we change courses here, tensions are escalating now between Texas Agriculture Commissioner Sid Miller and the USDA over how to combat the New World screwworm, of course, a parasitic pest threatening livestock near the southern border. Texas Ag Commissioner Miller is criticizing the USDA for not endorsing a synthetic fly bait that he claims could wipe out the pest in Mexico within 90 days. But the USDA is pushing back, calling his approach unproven and ineffective. In a statement released to RFD-TV, a USDA spokesperson said the agency has launched the most aggressive plan in U.S. history to stop the spread of screwworm, committing up to $750 million to build a sterile fly production facility at the Moore Air Force Base near the Texas-Mexico border. The USDA accused the Texas Ag Commissioner Miller of promoting clickbait publicity stunts instead of working with federal officials to find real science-based solutions. The USDA also dismissed Ag Commissioner Miller's traps as ineffective, saying tests showed they only caught one screwworm fly compared to thousands caught by USDA traps in Panama. Just one fly seems like not very many. That seems almost like a typo. It's not, but
feels like one. That is correct. I'm sure we will have more updates next week on the screwworm story. The ongoing government shutdown, though, has created a ripple effect across the ag sector and the dairy industry. It is feeling the impact firsthand. Chris Galen with the National Milk Producers Federation says the lack of federal dairy reports is hurting market transparency and making it harder now for producers to make informed decisions. He said that the milk prices have been pretty decent this year, yet stated, but certain commodities like butter has really dropped. Cheese has also dropped, though not as much. The U.S. is now facing some headwinds from tariffs, especially with China. This will provide broader economic pressures and increased production. So, Galen says one key factor behind falling butter prices is the unexpected surge in butterfat production. He stated that the amount of butterfat coming out of our cows has grown by leaps and bounds over the past decade. He said this is adding, without up-to-date federal data, it's difficult now to gauge the supply and demand trends in real time. So we'll continue to keep an eye on that. But my 2 cents is maybe this is a good time to develop farmer data.
That's a good idea. Maybe you can be in charge of that, Tanner. More continued government headlines. The ongoing shutdown is putting pressure on food assistance programs as well, and officials say it could leave millions of Americans without access to SNAP benefits next month. The USDA has warned states that without a new spending bill, funding SNAP will run out after the end of October. In past shutdowns, some states were able to issue early benefits, but officials say that may not be an option this time. Experts are saying ending the shutdown is critical to restoring stability across the food supply chain, of course, amongst many other sectors of our country, Tanner.
Yes, it would ease a lot of folks' minds. Well, the U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent is set now to meet with Chinese Vice Premier He Lifeng this week in an effort to prevent a sharp escalation in tariffs between the two countries. This meeting follows what Bessent said was a frank and detailed phone discussion last week. A temporary tariff truce brokered between the two leaders is set to expire on the 10th of November. President Trump has threatened to impose a 100% tariff on Chinese imports if China moves forward with plans to restrict rare earth exports. Though President Trump acknowledged the move is not sustainable. Trade tensions are spilling into the agricultural markets. China still facing high premiums on Brazilian soybeans and having already made large purchases from Argentina has yet to secure enough supply for December and January. Reuters reports that Chinese buyers may be forced to tap government reserves in the coming months as U.S. soybeans remain largely off the table due to this ongoing trade war discussion. Meanwhile, China is offering tariff relief to Canada, including pork, seafood, and canola in exchange for lower duties on Chinese electric vehicles. The move suggests China is exploring targeted trade diplomacy with other countries as the U.S. trade talks still remain tense.
It's interesting. The other day I saw, I don't remember, I think it was on Amazon maybe, and it said, these products will not be affected by tariffs.
Oh.
So, interesting disclosure. The National Corn Growers Association is highlighting California's recent law allowing year-round E15 access as a model for the nation. NCGA President Joe Bauer says if E15 had been available all year in California, it could have created demand for nearly 250 million additional bushels of corn, or about 12% of the expected surplus this year. Bauer urged Congress to expand year-round E15 access across the country, pointing to the potential benefits for corn growers nationwide. NCGA Chief Economist Krista Swanson explained that the ethanol market has been limited by the 10% blend wall, which restricts growth in corn demand. The USDA projects corn use for ethanol to remain steady at about 5.6 billion bushels over the next decade, unless regulations change. Swanson said expanding E15 use or allowing higher ethanol blends could significantly boost corn demand. With even a 1% increase in ethanol use, that could potentially add nearly 500 million bushels to that demand. Recent data shows ethanol production is rising as plants complete seasonal maintenance, reaching the highest weekly average in over a month, though exports have slightly declined. Swanson pointed to the bipartisan nationwide Consumer and Fuel Retailer Choice Act as a promising way to expand ethanol demand nationwide, though she acknowledged challenges remain, of course, in passing the legislation. Big challenges, I'd say, right now.
Yes, certainly. It would be great to have extra demand for our corn farmers and listeners around the country. We did see from the Farmers Business Network that they released its 2026 crop protection market report. They provided a warning of a significant price increase ahead due to the new tariffs and shifting global trade dynamics. John Apel, FBN's Vice President of Category Management, said 2026 will be structurally very different from 2025, when tariffs were largely known. He expects prices for key herbicides like glyphosate and glufosinate to both be heavily imported from China, with rises of nearly sharply 20% tariffs to take effect. Apel also said they highlighted the products such as 2,4-D face higher duties, including countervailing and anti-dumping tariffs that could reach up to 170%, while the agricultural chemical market has stabilized after clearing excess inventory in 2025. Future supply chains may remain vulnerable due to the reliance on a few overseas manufacturers and ongoing geopolitical tensions. Overall input costs for farmers, including chemicals, seed, fertilizer, labor, and repairs, are projected to increase by 4 to 6% in 26 compared to this year. The report points out the volatile global glyphosate market driven by strong demand and inventory restocking, while glufosinate is available with prices that could be uncertain due to the lack of domestic U.S. production. When we talk prices for 2,4-D, they are also expected to rise sharply amid those trade restrictions, especially being impacted by the imports coming from China and India. So not a lot of good news coming out of that report.
Maybe not a lot of good news this episode, unfortunately, I'm going to say. But as we kick it over to our interview for this week, as harvest continues to roll across the Corn Belt, farmers and ag experts are facing a season without the usual USDA crop progress reports. Now, with nearly a month of missing federal data and those timely local insights are even more crucial. To help with that, we've got Wyffels Hybrid joining us this week to release a weekly harvest report update using real-time data from their agronomy team. Let's hear this week their agronomist Brent Tharp with our Michelle Stangler.
Well, of course, we're well into harvest, well into that 50% mark. I'm here joined by Brent Tharp. Brent, tell us a little bit about who you are and the company that you work with.
Yeah, I'm Brent Tharp, Technical Product Manager at Wyffels Hybrids. So I've been at Wyffels for 20 years. And so I give agronomy sales support to our northern Illinois and southern Wisconsin sales team. but also get around the company. I work with our research team and kind of look at the new products that are coming along in the pipeline. So I walk some of the research sites that are spread around our Whiffles marketing geography.
Well, what are you seeing in the fields here this fall?
Yeah, another interesting year. It seems like we always say that, but definitely we're seeing the impact that plant health has, and because there's been some diseases that's definitely affecting hybrid performance. The big one being southern rust, which I'm sure we've talked about on the podcast in some other episodes, but southern rust was the big disease this year that kind of crept into the Midwest and is affecting hybrid performance. But it's not everywhere. I mean, it's a lot of Iowa and into Illinois. And but then you get into parts, let's say northern Illinois, the I-80 corridor north. Tar spot kind of had a more impact on the crop. So those are the big things we're dealing with. And then we had dry weather, and that's east central and central Illinois that is also affecting results.
Now, specifically with Illinois, are you seeing less yields than expected? I was reading some articles, and there's some speculation there, although we don't have the USDA crop reports.
Yeah. Overall, it kind of depends on what was your expectations going into it, and I think some people had some pretty high expectations, and so we may not be meeting those across the board. But I would say just in general, we have a very good crop on our hands, but probably not as good as maybe what we were expecting, what the USDA had kind of thrown out there from their last report. So now there are areas in some fields and just areas in Illinois and Iowa, all the states, to where I think management, some extra management paid, whether it be fungicide application or multiple applications or maybe some higher fertility programs. There's some pretty good yields being pulled off. But there's also fields that maybe weren't sprayed with a fungicide where the disease set in, and they're disappointed in the yields. And so the yields are lower. So, I mean, I can't prognosticate real well, but, that was a pretty stiff number that they had thrown out there on their last report, and I'm not sure we're going to meet it, to be honest.
Mm-hmm. Even in a year of it's easy to cut cost, and you definitely saw that while harvesting now.
Yeah. It's a very tough decision with the market we're in and the way the crop prices are. That fungicide decision it was tough. I mean, because it's an investment, and you're pulling the trigger on an investment that, well, you may not get paid every time. And so that's harder to do in these finance, but it paid off this year big time. And we're seeing some big benefits to the guys that went ahead and pulled the trigger and made some good fungicide applications.
Now, even with the uncertainty, you all your organization just released a new tool for farmers. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So Whiffles, if you get on whiffles.com, WYFFELS.com, and go to the agronomy tab, we have what we call the harvest progress report. And it's actually something that you don't have to be a Whiffles customer, and you can get in and you can share your harvest update. And we have a form that you fill out, and you can put in kind of a yield estimate range, or then you can also do how far along in harvest you are. So it's one of these, user generated. The more people we get, the more information accurate it is, right? So I was looking right now, we don't have a lot of reports for this week. So hopefully we get some people jumping on and adding their progress report and just their general yield estimates.
Certainly it's timely. Was this something in the works for months earlier this year, or was this something that you all pivoted here recently?
Yeah, so they started it up, at the beginning of harvest. So the marketing team had been planning this. We did a similar type of report with the planning progress report this spring. So it just so happens that, when the government shut down and everything, that the information isn't out there. So, it just coincided with that. So it would be good. I put a plug in for it. There's, it's pretty anonymous, and you could put in reports, and the more people we get, putting in those reports, the more useful that data would be for people, for everybody.
Mm-hmm. Now, of course, there's reports there. You're perhaps in the field. What are you hearing from farmers? That sentiment that is there, of course, with a lot of news, a lot happening on that tariff footprint. What's that overall sentiment that you're hearing from farmers?
Yeah, the sentiment, to me, it correlates real well with just our crop prices. So I don't get into the tariff discussion, from an agronomic standpoint. I try to avoid that. Pretty, what would I call it? Average, I guess. It's not, yeah. The crop prices and the economy's weighing on them. Yep.
Mm-hmm. Certainly.
Yeah.
Now, as you look, you said that you interact with the research. What's the newest and latest that you all are looking at?
Oh gosh, we have a research program to where we're testing new hybrids, so just new hybrid combinations, as well as traits. So, the pipeline's full. It's looking good. This year is giving us, just another set of environments. If we talk about the farmers or maybe struggling trying to figure out what hybrids did well, it works for us too. So we have to dig into that data and make sure we choose, proper hybrids that's working and bringing us consistent results. So, you got to look at some of the disease, how they're interacting with the disease. So as far as there's products coming to the top, but they're still experimental numbers at this point in time. So I can't give a good plug necessarily into what's coming, but there's definitely stuff that's some of the new experimentals are beating the tried and trues that we have, as comparison checks.
Mm-hmm. Now, going back to the disease pressure, did you see a lot of tar spot influence? What was the overall thought that you saw there?
Yeah, so the tar spot was more limited, I guess. The hardest hit tar spot area, from what I'm seeing, is along the I-80 corridor in Illinois. It stretches a little bit into Iowa, but I guess that I-80, so northern Illinois corridor, was where the tar spot came in. It was late, but yet it was early enough to impact some yield of some certain hybrids. Southern rust, though, was by far Trump's tar spot as far as the area that it covered. So the southern rust did cover a wider geography and had some big impact. Now, southern rust for, Corn Belt farmers, we're still saying, it's a disease. It does not overwinter in the Midwest. I don't believe we've selected for a new strain of it to do that, but it moved in this year from the south, and every year it kind of marches its way north. But if you go back and you look at the weather data, or just think back of what the summer was like, we had a very warm and very humid summer, hot nights. I always tell people, we had a southern summer up here in Illinois and Iowa. So the disease took advantage of that. And that's why I believe we saw it way more than we'll see it in the future, or at least I hope.
You can never predict, right?
No, yeah, right. Right.
Is it something to watch out, though, for next year and to think about here in this after harvest season, of thinking about some of those management strategies?
Yeah, from a southern rust standpoint, we're still taking the stance that we're not going to see it at this level, near this level, in coming years. So personally, I'm telling people, no, I wouldn't be making drastic decisions based off of that disease and what it did. Tar spot, we've had tar spot now for a few years, and it's a disease that does overwinter. So it crops up and kind of does its damage. We can't predict it, going into the season, but we can predict that it is going to show up at some level year in and year out. So we do have fungicide as a very good management tool for both those diseases. So that is something that that's to our advantage that we didn't necessarily have back when I started, way back 20 years ago. There wasn't a lot of fungicide applications. So now, we have ways to put it on, and, we can get it out there. But whenever we make that decision, that fungicide decision, which we are proponents of, we don't sell it, but we've just seen good positive results and good return on investment over the years. And this year's no different. In fact, it's more. So it's one of those things they have to pull the trigger and make that decision. And it's tough because you don't necessarily, see what the disease is going to do. You don't know what it's going to do because, it happens later on in the year, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Are there any other diseases that you're watching out for or to consider for next year?
Yeah, so, gray leaf spot's not gone away. I mean, and northern leaf blight. Those are the two other diseases that Midwest farmers are very familiar with. So we always keep track of those. You start getting into stalk rots and crown rot type of diseases. They're out there this year too. They're out there every year. Again, it's tough to predict it, and as with any disease, you do have to have the right kind of environmental conditions and weather conditions for them to kind of get going and cause yield reduction. So we definitely keep an eye on that, and we evaluate our hybrids based off of just their overall stalk integrity and health, and late season health, I guess, is a big way to fend off a lot of these diseases.
Great. Well, thanks for joining on the podcast, Brent.
Okay. Thank you for having me.
Well, thanks for doing that, Michelle. Now for a fertilizer update. A new report from Mizuho Investment Bank shows mixed movement in the fertilizer markets last week. Potash and phosphate prices edged a bit lower, while nitrogen prices held steady. Analysts noted that the phosphate affordability has reached its lowest point since 2028, raising concerns about reduced demand and possible market disruptions. Meanwhile, the supply delays have limited new production and it will continue to support higher ammonia prices, making it consecutive monthly increases. But despite some recent dips in fertilizer prices, they still remain elevated compared to the long-term average. This is signaling an ongoing pressure for farmers heading into the planting season for next year. Delaney, that's what happened in fertilizer. What happened in the commodity markets this week?
Well, again, a quick disclaimer. We are recording this on Wednesday afternoon, so we still have 2 full trading sessions this week. But we do know Brazil's farmers are planting record corn and soybean acres for the 25-26 growing season, according to the latest CONAB report, projecting soybean acres up 3.5% to 121 million acres and corn acres rising 4% to about 56 million acres, driven by strong biofuel demand and, of course, exports. However, University of Illinois Farm Doc article warns that rising production costs, lower prices, and high interest rates are likely to significantly squeeze profit margins despite the acreage growth. Brazilian farmers are dealing with a lot of the same challenges, Tanner. There are also thoughts that we may finally see some Chinese demand, although the U.S. did not load out any soybeans to China in September as trade tensions continue to escalate, but maybe we're turning a new corner here. It's now also beginning to seem likely we will not receive a November WASDE report next month as well. Rain benefits river levels, wheat planting should be able to continue after delays, and domestic prices have strengthened recently on these delays. And thoughts wheat use in feed could increase this year if corn is bad enough. As we think about the meetings between President Trump and President Xi next week in Korea, that could cause some excitement for the markets as well, ahead of that November 1st timeline when we may see tariffs increase here pretty substantially. So those are some of the things that the market is watching right now, with a lack of maybe government data to factor in as well.
Yeah, it'll probably be a wild ride, unfortunately. So listeners, be diligent in your plans and stick to those that you've put into place. Hopefully harvest is staying safe for you, your family, and your neighbors. We appreciate you tuning in every week. It's always our pleasure to share that news with you.
That's right. And what do you say, Tanner? We let the people go.
Let's let them go.